Okay, why should they have big screens? So that standing anywhere in the room, you can see what's on all the computers. That's very, very important. Remember the hole in the wall? They were out in the road. Why didn't anything ever go wrong? Because everybody in the village could see what was happening. So if you create that condition inside school, you have to be a lot less careful about controls and discipline and filters and blah, blah, blah. So heavy, large public visibility and safety. You create this chaotic situation, you give them a question, build up to the question. It's not as though you come and write down a question on the board. You tell them a little story, then you go and build to a question. Then you let it run for a while, then you get them to report the answers. Initially, they will compete until you explain to them that, look, I'm not interested in who has found the answer. The whole class has to find the answer. So you have to work together and find the answer. I just want one answer from the entire class. Then you'll start getting interesting results as they understand the nature of the method. So what it does, we'll come to that in a little more detail, but they very quickly adapt to this as a method. And you'll find often enough that you can treat many curricular subjects using method like this. So for example, suppose you want to start teaching trigonometry. So how would you do it actually? You would go into class and you'll say, I'm going to start this very important subject called trigonometry or something like that. You're going to give a little intro before you start off on triangles and this, that, the other thing. But as you might all remember, within the first 1 hour everybody's asleep. Because, trigonometry isn't the most exciting thing on the planet. So, what can we do? Well, I tried this in China a couple of years ago. I took a class full of these 10-year-olds, I think. I gave them the usual setup, a few computers and so on. And I said, do you use smartphones? So, all of them use smartphones. So I said, my question is, how does a smartphone know where it is? So they said, what's that? I said, you take the smartphone and you open maps and it tells you I'm over here. How does it know where it is? So then I let them do a solve on that. So they came back after a while, they said there's something called GPS. So I said, yeah, of course I know there's something called GPS, but that's just 3 letters. How does it do it? How does it figure out where it is on the map? I said, okay, give us 10 minutes more. They went for 10 minutes more. Then they came back and said, there's a subject called trigonometry. So I said, okay, all right, we're getting there. So I said, do you want to know how it actually calculates where it is? And they said, yes. So then I knew I got them. Because after that you can stand and teach them about right angle triangles and everything, and they'll listen. Because now they have a tangible problem. So, which is another thing that I've learned from the hole in the wall that I think may be worth keeping in mind. That, in all our minds, because of Victorian thinking, we think of a certain sequence for development. We think that science comes first. Results of science get converted into objects, and then the objects are combined together to form technology. And then you have technology. So it's almost as though if you took a large building and put a lot of professors on top and gave a lot of money into science, then from the bottom of the basement will come pouring out technology. It doesn't work that way. Science and technology also evolve like everything else. So the subject called thermodynamics is not what created the steam engine. The steam engine, which was created by trial and error by basically mechanics, is what generated the subject called thermodynamics. It works the opposite way. So the soul tries to mimic this. So if you look at my my trigonometry question, if I started by saying how great trigonometry is as a theoretical subject, you've already lost the attention of the class. But if you actually start with ground upwards to say, how do you find out how tall a mountain is if you can't go up to it? And then work backwards, and then finally say, well, there's a subject for trigonometry, and this is how it works. So that's basically how the soul works. What you just missed is a clip which basically showed souls being conducted, just to give you an idea of how it works. The idea of the soul started spreading out through England, from northeast England downwards, mainly because teachers, started talking word of mouth to each other, saying, this is a very cool method, instead of beginning to teach, you can just generate it with a question. So it started traveling down. Then it went into Europe. Then, for some reason, it jumped into 2 other continents. I still don't know how that happened, probably accidental. Into Australia and South America. 2 opposite ends. And I was traveling all this time, showing people how to conduct these things. And then it just spread out everywhere. It spread out with no government support, because the government had no reason to support it. Because to the government, you teach, the students learn, and then the government examines. This is the sequence. The soul was not following that. The soul was almost like starting with an exam and then going backwards. So the government didn't have any way, not just ours, but any of the governments, they still kind of struggle with the idea. But what we found in the process of doing all these shows is that unsupervised groups of children can use the internet to learn anything by themselves. I know that sounds like a very tall, very big statement, but this generation that you see now outside, all of them staring at their phones, and many of us react negatively by saying, they're wasting time, they're playing games all the time, they're chatting, whatever it is. I'm not sure we know what's going on, because I think they're reading a lot more than they ever did before. And what that is doing to their minds is not very obvious, but these results are documented, that unsupervised groups of children given access to the internet can learn anything by themselves if they want to. So your job becomes, can you make them want to learn that? Well, that water drop experiment I won't be able to do because there's a video which won't run, but what I wanted to show with that was that in nature, if you look at a structure like what you're seeing now, and if I were to ask you, so who designed that? That's a very age-old question really, and there are all kinds of answers, but we know from whatever science we know until today, we know this, the answer is nobody designed it. It just happened by itself. Isn't it? We have some idea of how it works, but we really don't know. These things have a name in science. They're called self-organizing systems. We don't really know very much about them, but they're also called complex dynamical systems. Very interesting subject.